that's straight and bright. By the light of the Word.
Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
If all that you can leave your children is something that a lawyer can divide or a court can divide up, then you left them nothing. Parent, we need to leave the legacy, and this is the legacy that I want to leave as David was known, a man after God's own heart. What legacy, dads, are you leaving? The only legacy that will last will be a legacy of righteousness.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the Word.
Our culture tells us our legacy lies in the possessions and wealth that we leave behind. In Pastor Ray's message today, he teaches that a true legacy is that of a man after God's own heart. If you are only striving towards earthly riches, you will not leave behind a meaningful legacy. It is far better to teach our children about God than to chase after things that will tarnish and fade. Be encouraged today to establish a meaningful relationship with God our Father, one that your children will be blessed to have after your departure. Well, let's join Pastor Ray in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 18, for today's edition of Light of the Word.
Is it not interesting as we read there, Luke 11, the apostles, they've spent all this time with Jesus. They've watched him do all these mighty works, raising the dead, preach to the multitudes, mighty healings, you name it. And we watch him do these things. And they come to him, and what do they say? Lord, teach us to pray. They didn't come and they didn't say, oh, Lord, teach us to preach like you do. Oh, Lord, teach us how to raise the dead. Lord, teach us how to heal the sick. Because if we can raise the dead, heal the sick, people will be flocking to you. The kingdom will advance by great leaps and bounds if we can preach and pull fish out of the air and multiply and all these type of things. But what do? After all this time of walking with Jesus, they look and they say, his power is not in the preaching, the raising of the dead. His power is in the prayer room. And they come and they say, Lord, teach us to pray. They truly come and they truly see this power that should have. And Jesus himself says what? Mark 11, verse 16. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught themselves, saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. He didn't say that, the church, my house will be called a house of preaching. Oh, my house will be called a house of singing. Oh, my house will be called a house of potlucks. He comes and he simply says, my house shall be called a house of prayer. And that's where they see the power. David's in the prayer room. And the power is going to come. Verse 5, now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains order concerning Absalom. This is David's heart. This is David's heart to Absalom. Verse 33, when we finish, Absalom will be dead, and David will weep bitterly. And we'll see how that literally plays our whole next chapter, 19. I wonder if Absalom if he knew David's heart, the depths of his love that David has for Absalom, if this chapter would have ended differently. If Absalom would have truly known, my father is not the same man he was 7 years ago when all this blew up. It all began when Absalom's half-brother Amnon raped his sister Tamar. And we read David does nothing. Absalom goes into exile. Joab moves some pieces, and Absalom gets brought back to Jerusalem, but David won't see him for 2 more years or 3. They got this distancing now for 5 years, and then finally David sees him, but as we talked, the damage has been done. But you know what? David's not the same man that he was 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. He's not even the same man, I believe, that he was a month ago in our story. Mom and dad, do you have some distancing between you and your child? Maybe they're wayward. Maybe you had a word that was spoken and it's turned into this. You look back and go, man, that's 7 years now. How did we get here? Do they know that you're not the same person you were 7 years ago, or 7 months ago, or 7 weeks ago? Do they know that? And I believe God's going to ask somebody here today, and it's going to be hard for you to hear this. I want you to tell them, regardless of how right you think they were, even how wrong they were, I want you to know, and you make that call. You make that email. You make that text, whatever it might. You write that letter. I want you to know my love for you. I want you to know my heart cries out for you. Because they might totally think this is what you think. They might totally feel this is where your heart is, separated and distant and bittered and resentment towards them. But maybe you're the son or the daughter, and maybe you're not even wayward, or maybe you are. You're not the same person you were, especially if you're sitting here. I don't know why you'd come here. I don't know why you'd be listening on the radio. You're not the same person you were, but there's this distancing between your parents or some certain person in your life, and God will speak to you. Call, write, tell them. Look, I know this went down, and I know it went bad, and we got this distance. I want you to know my heart. I love you. And listen, I want a personal relationship with you. And if you need to say, listen, I'm not the same person I was 7 years ago when this happened. God's done a work in me, and God's shown me some things, and God's broken some things in me. I'm not the same person, and I'd like you to meet the heart that I have today. I want you to experience and know this, because I wonder if Absalom would have known this heart of David. Oh, for my sake, please be careful about the young man Absalom, if this whole chapter could have changed. Verse 6-8. So the people went out into the field of battle against Israel, and the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown. When it speaks of Israel, it's talking about Absalom's forces, because he's now has command, as we saw, over the army of Israel. They were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place there at that day. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. And I know this is kind of hard for us to picture. We're like, what kind of woods would this have been? More people were killed in the woods than on the battlefield. And it's partly because we don't know what the environment was 3,000 years ago in this area. This battle's about 3,000 years ago. we don't fully see what that environment was like, because that area of Israel has been so beaten down, overrun, abused, and taken, mistreated. We don't see it. We think of it as parched desert for the most part. But historians and writings, and even some of the rebirth of Israel that we see today, this place, this is the tropics. This is Middle East, hot climate, moisture. This, I'm going to liken it to as something like the Everglades, a tropical type area with swamps and with heavy brush. And when I was living down in Louisiana, man, we go back in some of those places back in the woods. It's like, man, you got to keep yourself, you got to be aware of what's going on there. In Louisiana, in the bayou or the Everglades. And this is very much Israel, when they came back into the land in May 14th, 1948, they knew, and you hear Benjamin Netanyahu today, he's like, this is biblical fulfillment. We are back in the land, just as the book of Isaiah said we would, just like the book of Ezekiel said. Do you realize that, Christian? I'm digressing. We live in the day. We are the people. 2,000 years later, we've seen the rebirth of Israel. No one has ever lived 2,000 years without a homeland. The greatest length of history tells us 200 years that a nationality survived without a homeland. Israel went 2,000 years without a homeland, and yet here before our eyes, biblical fulfillment of the nation of Israel coming back in the land, just as God said that he would, just as Jesus said that they would, all a picture of before his return. We are like this close to the return of Jesus Christ. I probably have never said this, but I believe if Jesus Christ does not return today, then he's going to return tomorrow. And if he doesn't return today, ask me tomorrow, and I will tell you the same thing. If Jesus Christ doesn't return today, then he's returning tomorrow. I know you've never heard me say that before. We are the generation. There's a whole path of prophetic strings that I could go down to, but when they came back into the land, they said, we are biblical fulfillment of Isaiah and Ezekiel, and therefore not just the people that God wants back into the land. Israel actually determined, we want the land to be like it was in the time of the Bible. We don't just want people, we want the environment. We don't just want people and the environment, we want the animals too. So they're going through the history, they're going through the Bible, and they're going like, what animals were here? What was the environment? And they're starting, and they're still working today to bring the land into what it looked like in the biblical time. Well, there was actually alligators, crocodiles, panthers, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my, lions and tigers and bear. They're in that region. So they started bringing those animals back in. They actually said, well, where do we find alligators and crocodiles? We'll call United States. We'll call down there in Miami. We'll call down there to the Everglades folks, and we say, hey, we'd like some alligators sent over. We want to bring alligators so we can start repopulating the land. Well, the CIA gets word of that, and they go, what in the world does Israel want with a bunch of alligators and crocodiles? We better get involved in this. They had no idea that it was all because they want to bring the land back into the Bible times. Where am I going? I'm painting a picture. It's amazing, prophetic and biblical picture. But here in our story today, it'd be like going to war in the bayou. And if you don't know the bayou, don't go in the bayou. There's lions, there's tigers, there's bears, there's panthers, there's alligators, there's quicksand. And if you don't know where you're going, you can find yourself in a hurting place. And so here they are, they're literally in a jungle warfare. Who has the greatest advantage in jungle warfare? David and his 600 men. They knew what it was to fight in rocks and crevices. They knew how to hide into the pitch of the bayou. And in this environment. And so here they are, these men, they're in the field. I think it's just a battle strategy. They're in the field fighting. Joab and the guys, they go into the woods. And so Absalom and his forces come in, and now David's men has the full advantage of this. And you know what Absalom doesn't have? He doesn't have Ahithophel, the greatest military strategist. He was equal with David because of Ahithophel, as we read, didn't commit suicide last chapter. Ahithophel said, don't go in there. There's panthers in there. There's alligators. There's quicksand. And then there's David's men hiding behind trees. You're going to flow in. And it's going to be a slaughter. He doesn't have that. Absalom has his vainglory. Absalom's vainglory. Absalom is not a military commander. Who rides he rides a donkey into the bayou for war. And we're going to read his hair is going to get caught. He's not a military strategist. He's found himself in the wrong place. 20,000 men killed in one day. Do you picture the slaughter? Even in modern day war, I have to really dig deep to find battles where 20,000 men died in one day. This is a massive slaughter to think of 20,000 bodies dead. But I know some of them, they found themselves face to face with an alligator, a panther. It's a perfect setup. 20,000 men of Israel die. And as I've laid this string out in our past studies, so David, it's just one night, and we just think that our sin is only our sin. But the consequences flowed itself out. It flows to, it's not just David's sin now, it's Bathsheba. And then it's not just David and Bathsheba, Uriah dies. Not to mention that Uriah dies as David sends him to the front wall, but other men who were with Uriah, they go to the front wall as it was directed by Joab, and they die because they're in the same battle to get Uriah up to the wall so he can get killed. So innocent men in that particular battle that Uriah died, they die. And as we weave that through, at the end of all this, because of Absalom and the distancing and the separation and the chastening that God's going to bring, 20,000 men die through this string. But I do want to say this. I personally don't see that these 20,000 men, that it's David's fault. Even though we can read the stringing. So they're there because all this string played out. These 20,000 men died because they chose the wrong king. They chose Absalom. They chose the wrong king. David was the Lord's anointed. These men had a choice. And as we read in the past chapters, but Absalom stole their hearts. And that is the picture of Satan. John 10:10, the thief does not come. The thief, Absalom stole their heart. And I want you to know this, saved or unsaved, the devil wants to steal your heart. And then when he steals it, and he'll steal it by Absalom's the perfect picture. How did Absalom steal the hearts of the people? He misrepresented the heart of the king. He totally tore down the heart of David, saying that David was distant, saying that David didn't care about them, saying that David didn't have time for them. And that's what the thief will say to you. Oh, the king wants to keep you from something. He wants to steal, and then here's what his plan is. And we see it 20,000, to steal, to kill, and destroy. Whereas the true King of kings, the King of my heart, Jesus Christ, I've come that they may have life and they may have it more abundantly. Verse 9, then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule. The mule went under the thick burrows of the great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth, so he was left hanging between heaven and earth, and the mule which was under him went on. What vain glory. What kind of man rides a mule into a bayou? We know it's vainglory because What kind of man weighs his hair? Remember we read that. It says every year he'd cut his hair. Okay, that's great. You cut your hair. Well, what type of man weighs his hair then? Because they would weigh it, and it would come out to 5 pounds. It's vainglory, and it's going to cost him his head. His glory, his vanity went to his head, and now his head is what cost him his life. Verse 10 through 14. Now a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in the terebinth tree. They'd be like, what? So Joab said to the man who told him, you just saw him? And why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, beware, lest anyone touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise I would have dealt falsely against my own life, for there is nothing hidden from the king, and that is so true. And you yourself would have set yourself against me. Then Joab said, I can't linger with you. And he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. Joab is a mercenary at this point because he doesn't obey the word of the king. He transgressed the word of the king. And there's a word for us. Verse 15, and 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. I find 10 an interesting number, for he violated and abused those 10 concubines. Verse 16, so Joab blew the trumpet and the people returned from pursuing Israel. So Joab held back the people. So once the king is captured, the battle's over and everybody knows the king's been conquered, call it a day. Verse 17, and they took Absalom and cast him into a large pit in the woods and laid a large heap of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, everyone to their tent. Means they went home. Interesting, Deuteronomy 21, the penalty for a rebellious child was to be stoned and then covered with those stones. Verse 18, now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. But we read that he did have sons, so we're not sure why he made this monument. He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it's called Absalom's monument. If you go to Israel, they'll show you it. It's probably not it, though, but he makes a monument to himself, the vainglory. John the Baptist, he gives us the greatest word. He must increase, but I must decrease. Absalom wants to bring a monument to himself. I like what Pastor Joe always says. He says it's often. He says, parent, listen, parent, if all that you can leave your children is something that a lawyer can divide or a court can divide up, then you left them nothing. Parent, we need to leave the legacy, and this is the legacy that I want to leave, as David was known, a man after God's own heart. What legacy, dads, are you leaving? The only legacy that will last will be a legacy of righteousness, that your children will look and say, my dad was a man of honor. He honored the Lord. He was a man of righteousness. He was a man after God's own heart.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the word.
We know your day is hectic and filled to the brim, so we're so happy you chose to spend time with us today on Light of the Word. We'd like to share another way you can hear Pastor Ray Bolus's messages and even take them with you on the go. Light of the Word has a mobile app for Apple, Android, and Windows devices, giving you access to the latest teachings as soon as they're made available, right at your fingertips. You'll also have Pastor Ray's teaching notes, be able to set up a personalized Bible reading plan, plus discover more about Calvary Chapel of Anne Arundel County, the church these messages originate from. You'll find a link to download this app under the About tab at our website, ccaac.org. We'd love to stay in touch with you, so don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter while you're there. Do you have a prayer request you'd like to share with us, or do you have any questions? If so, please take a moment to email us at mail@ccaac.org. That email address again is mail@ccaac.org. We'll get back to you as soon as possible and do our best to answer your questions. We love that we can lift our listeners up to the Lord in prayer, and we'd like to ask you if you do the same for us. Thanks for praying, and thanks for listening today to Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.